everybody, Lisa Armani here, the Breakthrough Life Coach, and today what we're going to talk about is abandonment trauma and what happens to us when we are triggered in the now and we are sucked into the vortex of the past. And just imagine if you were having an argument with a friend who makes you feel invisible, or you're having an argument with a narcissistic spouse and you are not being heard. What will happen is you will feel triggered. And before long, if you're not careful, you will be behaving and reacting very similarly to when you did and how you did as a child. So what do you want to remember? You want to pay attention to how you feel when you are feeling yourself being triggered. The three things I want you to remember are, when we are being triggered, we are literally being sucked back in time on what I call the quantum timeline. And we are sucked back into that space that is unhealed. And we are literally in the now, feeling energetically and mentally and emotionally like we did when we were experiencing that wound when we were younger. So know that you can be in the now, but feel like you're 3 again and 4 again. So just remember, when you're being triggered, energetically, you're going to feel like that wounded child again. The second thing you must remember is that you will absolutely begin to feel powerless if you are sucked back into time and you are experiencing or re-experiencing a trauma that you have yet to heal. So expect to feel powerless and small and insignificant, and just like you have no resources. You can't fight, you can't flee, and in most cases you will freeze. The third thing I want you to remember is that you absolutely will react like you did when you were small. So expect to react to this situation feeling panicked, right? Just the way you did when you were a small, innocent, and powerless child. So let's just recap. So when you're being re-triggered in the now, you will absolutely feel like the energy of the inner child. Your energy will, in the now, mimic the energy you felt as the inner child. Number 2, you absolutely will feel powerless. And number 3, your reactions, the kinds of things that you say, will also mimic the inner child. So here are the 3 things that I want you to remember the next time you get triggered. Number 1, orient yourself to space and time. Literally remember what day it is, what year it is, where you're living, how old you are. Orient yourself to facts in space. Your brain cannot tell the difference between perception of a fantasy or what's really happening in the now. That's why it's so important to orient yourself to where I am now. Because if you don't, the information, the visceral information and inflammation that will flood your system will so mirror how you felt as a powerless child that your ability to react as a grown-ass woman or a grown-ass man will be totally hijacked by the trigger. The second thing that I want you to do is repeat to yourself, I am not a child. Remember, when you're being triggered, right, your body is being flooded with all this past stuff, and you'll feel powerless, and your energy body will become that of the wounded inner child. You will react as if you were again in that state of mind in that state as the inner child. You will literally react and behave and think, and won't be able to come up with coping skills because you were a powerless little child who had no coping skills, right? And so I want you to say to yourself, I am not a child. This will help orient you to where you are in space and time. The third thing that I want you to absolutely remember, and the more you practice these ideas and the more you say them out loud, the more you help reprogram your mind and heal your subconscious mind from faulty beliefs that are holding you stuck, holding you back, right? You have to say to yourself, in your mind or even out loud, no one is the boss over me. No one is the boss over me. No one is the boss over me. I am a grown-ass woman or a grown-ass man. I am not a child. This person is not my mother. I do not have to act like I'm an innocent child and powerless child anymore. It is whatever year it is. I am whatever age I am. No one is the boss over me, and I have a choice here. I am enough, and I have a choice. I do not have to be treated this way. I have a right to be treated well. And if you practice these ideas enough, I promise you they will be very powerful, and They will help you in a pinch. So just want you to remember that when you have been abused as a child, you have been brainwashed to believe that you're unworthy. You have been brainwashed to believe that you're not enough. You have grown up not feeling like you were respected, which means you have no boundaries. You have no mental boundaries. You have no personal boundaries. You have no material boundaries. You have no physical boundaries. Why? Because everybody violated your boundaries. So if someone wanted to touch you, they touched you, whether it was inappropriate touch, or they hit you, or they kissed you, or they pressed up against you, or they kicked you, or they pulled your hair. There was no boundary there when you were a child. If you had material possessions, oftentimes, you'll feel like your clothes weren't even your clothes, or your books weren't your books. Your toys weren't your toys. Your bed wasn't your bed. There was nothing that you had that was yours, right? So you have no idea of material boundaries. So if you suffered from mental abuse, you have a very difficult time understanding that you have a right to set a boundary, a mental boundary with somebody who is draining you. Because when you were a child, your energy and the things that were said to you, there was no boundary there. Everything was crossed. You were violated mentally, emotionally, physically, psychically, spiritually, right? So this idea of boundaries is very uncommon for adult children of alcoholics, children of narcissistic parents, those of us who have been sexually abused. This idea of being able to protect ourselves is foreign. Those of us who have suffered from some type of childhood emotional neglect or childhood abuse, we have to understand that we will be triggered as adults until we heal the wounds that are keeping us stuck. So because being triggered is inevitable, right, until we actually heal, I wanted to create this video to help those of you who are suffering with triggers and sometimes slip down the rabbit hole. I also want to remind you that when you are locked in an argument with somebody else, there's a much higher chance that you're going to be triggered. There's a much higher chance that you're going to be triggered because when two people are arguing, they're not listening. They're not listening. They both want to be heard and they both want to be right. When we argue, right, we are setting ourselves up to be triggered because the energy is very high, it's very rapid, we're not thinking, we're reacting, we're in the amygdala, and the longer you fight, the closer you are to being pushed into a state of survival. And when you're pushed into a state of survival, cortisol increases, bells and whistles go off, adrenaline is kicking in, flooding your system, and you lose the ability to think about the way that you think. So I hope this video has inspired you to argue less, to care less what people think about you, to accept that people have a right to think what they want, even if it is out of alignment with what you want, right? You haven't been put on this earth to make people happy. You've been put on this earth to figure out who you are and find a way to make this life experience as enjoyable as possible for you. Why? So that you can find the light within you and just shine it brightly. Just shine it brightly, dear ones. Know that when you argue, there's a very high chance that you will be triggered and you will feel like the inner child. And you will react from that space, and that's just not necessary. Know that you can have these anchoring thoughts, what I call staple thoughts, to help you out of a difficult situation. Remember to orient yourself to space and time. Remind yourself you're not a child. Say to yourself often, no one is the boss over me. Namaste, everybody. Until next time. Bye for now. Namaste, everybody. Lisa A. Romano here. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I really, really do hope that it helps you, especially when you are feeling triggered by something in your environment. I hope it helps you feel more anchored and more centered and more in control. I just want to let you guys know that I have a membership site where I have sunk a bunch of my programs, a bunch of worksheets and workbooks and workshops. You can actually download a copy of The Road Back to Me, my first book, my baby. When you sign up, you can download a meditation. You can listen to meditations that are for sale on my website. You can participate in programs that are available on my website. You can become a Breakthrough Warrior of the Month and join my private Facebook group where I hold monthly and sometimes, just impromptu live streams. So if you are somebody who believes that you'll benefit from self-study, so if you're disciplined and you will take advantage of this, what I believe is almost like a course a university, if you will, of information that will allow you to learn how to gain more control over your emotional states of being, so that you can move towards a more productive life. If you believe that you're that person, please check out my membership site. I welcome you, and namaste. Bye for now.